Hello, it's so nice to be back. Again, we are continuing with our learning of Rav Kook. I've been away. I was on vacation in California. I went to a beautiful friend's wedding. It seems to be wedding season. I think I have 8 weddings this year. I must be that age. I'm 30 now, so it must be wedding season. Everybody's getting married. I went to a wedding last weekend of some beautiful friends in California, and I went to a wedding yesterday as well. So it's really a joyous time. And I'm just really excited to finally get back to learning with everybody over Facebook or podcast or SoundCloud, wherever you're listening to me. I really want to work with some of the Torah we've been learning with Rav Kook, Rabbi Avraham Yitzchak Cohen Kook, and not just to learn that Torah, but to really try to integrate it into our lives. I want to tell you about my own personal struggle to integrate it into my life. So it's not just some ideas out there, some mystical, philosophical ideas, but really that this integrates into our lives, and to show you maybe in a more personal way how I struggle with these ideas, to integrate this into my life. So we'll learn a little bit. I'll talk a little bit about my own life and how I think over this past week I've really tried to struggle to put this into my own life in that regard. All right, so this teaching, which I've been kind of really thinking about lately, is called Mekodesh Lechol Umechol Lechodesh. It's from holiness to the profane, from the profane to holy. And this is the traditional language in Judaism and Hebrew that's used to delineate the two categories of something that's holy, usually holy times like Shabbat, versus chol, profane times or non-holy times like the weekday, or a non-holiday time. Those are the terms that are traditionally used, and Rav Kook is using them, I think, in a bigger sense here. Let's see what he has to say. He writes, Ha'avodot ha'sichliot mit halakot l'shtei marachot klaliot. He writes I'm teaching the wrong teaching here, the wrong title. Excuse me. Let's start this again here. Oh man, I've never done that before. Okay, let's go on to, the teaching that we're learning today is called Hashpa'at HaKodesh V'Achol, the influence of the holy on the profane. Oh man, I can't believe that happened. I read the wrong title here. All right, we have to integrate this here. Okay, the influence of the holy on profane. So same language, Kodesh and Chol, but it's about the influence of the holy on profane. He writes, Ein kavanat kol hashpa'a haba'a mebechutz letoch yoto shel adam bein memekorot hakodesh bein memekorot hachol. He writes, there is ein kavanat kol hashpa'a haba'a mechutz. The implication or the intention of all of the influences and stimuli that come from the externality outside of us to the inside of us, of each and every person, all right? Whether those things and those stimuli originate in the holy realm or from things that are profane, they don't all come to quiet a person's spirit. What he means by this here, and I'll say it in layman's terms, not everything that happens to us comes to quiet us down, to quiet our inner spirit, to resist us, to hurt us, to push us down, to push out our inner being. And what Rav Kook understands here is that every person has an inner essence, something about them that drives them, a fire, a passion that kind of moves them forward, that makes them unique and is the way that they're actually supposed to be in the world. And there's a perception that goes around that at least I've certainly felt it, that everything that is against that perception, or everything that doesn't necessarily agree immediately with that way of seeing the world, is here to push one's own perspective away, to resist one's own perspective. And I love this. Lashtik et roch adam. And this is what it really feels like, to quash the spirit of a person, to really silence a person. And I think that's why so many times when we have a disagreement with someone, we get so angry, because we really feel like quieted. We really feel silenced. And there's something about our inner spirit that really feels silenced at this point. And he continues, he says, Li'ilem la'alem et rayono ha'atzmi, to blind one's own independent, essential ideas about life. Right? Each and every one of us have ideas about the way life lived, and we have goals, and we have ways in which we run our lives. And often we fall into this paradigm of being really resistant to outside influence in that regard. And he says, rather, we should actually look at external influences that come from outside of us as things that shine light on us, that are able to bring light down from a high region so that we can receive them in our inner depths, in our inner essence. And by doing this, by integrating those outside influences and those exterior influences into our lives, they actually help our internal ideas, ourselves, and our own internal identities actually grow stronger. Right? And this is something that we often don't feel to be actually happening. Right? We live our lives a lot of the times, or I should say I live my life a lot of the time, when I hear an idea that disagrees with me or something that's coming from outside of me that doesn't seem to match with my internal spirit or my internal way of perceiving the world, maybe it doesn't match with my value structure or my values, I tend to fight against it. I tend to argue back. I tend to kind of put a wall around myself to protect that essential spirit. But Rav Kook is actually asking us to do the opposite, to really try to integrate that, to use it as a way to actually strengthen one's own internal identity, for it to do some what's called birur, clarification of one's own internal ideas. And I want to say right from the beginning, this is really harder done than said, right? Easier said than done, right? And that's kind of what I've been struggling with a lot, is really how to apply this. And we'll certainly get into that in a bit, of really how to apply this in our lives. How do we get to point A to point B? How do we get to becoming a person that instead of repudiates the ideas around us or repudiates the people or the value structures that seem to be outside of our own identity, how do we become people who integrate those things into our lives and really make them helpful? And then integrate more the world into our realities and become more connected to the people and the environment around us. That's something that I'm truly struggling with. And if you have any advice for me, I'd love to hear it. But I've been really thinking about it this week. And he continues, Kesharishul mehamem et adam. When, and this is especially, I think this is really what causes us a lot of trouble, when the rishul, or the negligence, mehamem et adam choshev hu, when the negligence that we find that surrounds us stupefies a person, a thinking person, right? When we see bad things occur around us, when we see less than perfect characters or less than perfect things happening around us that seem to be doing terrible things in the world, and they seem to be very short-sighted, and it causes a lot of distress to a thinking person. We tend to then jump to the conclusion that all things that come from the exterior, all intelligence, all ideas, all people that come from the outside are here to disgust our idea, to destroy our own internal conception of our reality and our own internal ideas. They come to constrict and to destroy and to wipe away. Lekabso ulatashtasho uba mizeh kotzer ruach, and it comes from this a shortness of spirit, v'chesron hitalut, and a lack of elevation in our lives. I have to say, I've really experienced this myself. When we, to be a Jew in this world is hard. To be a religious person who believes in God and has faith in this world where we live in such a secular world today, when it's not like everybody believes in God and everybody lives naturally with faith. Rather, I feel like I'm surrounded by a secular world, and I'm constantly fighting a lot of the time to try to kind of make my way more apparent and magnify my own ideas in this world, and try to at least make a space for me to live, especially as a Jew, to be kosher. And find food that I can eat in Middletown, New York is hard. And it's very, very difficult. to be able to walk on Shabbat without an eruv is very, very difficult. How many hours I've spent figuring out how to walk my dog on Shabbat is a very, very, it's a crazy thing. And it's because, in some ways here, we don't live in a big Jewish world, a big Jewish community. And I struggle against so many influences I see outside of us, outside of myself, that I see as immoral or I see as hurtful. I see as pushing me away. But Rav Kook here is pushing me in the opposite direction. He's pushing me to say, well, really, you need to integrate these things. You need to find a way to make those external realities a vessel for your own godly light. Now, how does, living in a place with scarcity of kosher food or scarcity of an eruv or a lot of Jewish communal functions, how does that actually strengthen one's own identity? And how does that strengthen my own thought? How does living within a secular reality of this world where we're surrounded by most people, so many people who think believing in God is some crazy fantasy, right? How does living in that reality actually create a vessel for us to live our own ideas? How does it influence our own ideas to make them stronger and to make them more beautiful? How, instead of trying to repudiate people who disagree with us, and certainly people who disagree with me, how, instead of repudiating them, fighting them, and cursing them, how do we enable to integrate them into our own lives and live with them in a single spirit in that regard? And that's what Rav Kook is challenging us to do. And you hear it in my voice. I struggle with it here. I just went to 2 weddings, and they were beautiful weddings. I really, really enjoyed it. And they were beautiful people, and it was wonderful. They were the first homosexual, they were first gay weddings I ever went to. And that was really interesting to me. I believe in gay weddings, and I believe in gay people getting married, and it's a beautiful thing. And these are beautiful friends of mine. So I certainly believe in that. But I have to admit, and it takes a lot of, it's very hard to admit this because I think I might be misunderstood. But there was a little bit of discomfort since it was my first time seeing this, because it was something that I wasn't used to. It was just something I wasn't used to. So it took me a while to get comfortable with that. And also, as a traditionalist, as someone who really respects the rabbi's liturgy and the way our rabbis have chosen to do certain rituals, a lot of things needed to change in a homosexual or gay marriage. And so that also made me really uncomfortable. It was against my feelings, my inner way. And I think I really held this Rav Kook teaching at this time of like, I know that it's wonderful and beautiful that gay people can marry now and marry who they love, and each person can marry who they love, and that's wonderful. And I know that, and each wedding was truly trying to integrate what is so, to make it so Jewish and so beautiful and so vibrant, and it truly was. But that's what, and they were doing what Rav Kook was saying, to integrate the things that at first might seem outside of the realm of holy and to integrate it into the holy. But for me, I think I was slow on the uptake, and I really struggled with that. I think it takes time. It really does take time. I kind of wanted to step back. I wanted to crawl back into my own shell where I felt comfortable. And I think I want to hold out the space of saying, like, how do we walk in that place of discomfort, and how do we are able to integrate into our own journeys the places that make us uncomfortable? And he really centers on this now in this beautiful way. HaKodesh v'achol yachad mashpi'im hem al ruach adam. The holy and the profane together unite and illuminate the spirit of a human person. V'hu mit asher al yidei klitat tomehem mekol achad et ha'ra'ui. And it enriches the person by way of his or her absorption of them into his or her own spirit as would be appropriate. Right? So the more we are able to both appropriate holy things, meaning, the Torah, the ideas of the Torah and the ideas of ethics and the ideas of Judaism and what I would interpret for each and every one of us maybe as our own internal journey and our own things that make us comfortable, our own things that are holy to us. the more we integrate and absorb those things into our own soul, as well together with absorbing the things that maybe we would consider exterior to us or outside of us, or we would consider whole or profane. The more we integrate those things into our life and use them as a vessel for our own Kedusha, what Rav Kook is saying, that makes our life more rich, not money-wise, right, but more of a spirit. Right? We feel more connected to reality, and we stop walking around like soldiers trying to beat each other over, and then we can turn our swords into plowshares, as it says in Isaiah. If we're able to try to truly conceive of those who might disagree with us and try to integrate them into our own lives, this is very hard to do, not easy. But I think it happens slowly, and Rav Kook in the next teachings that will be coming up, we'll certainly talk more about how to do this and how this occurs and how we learn as human beings and how we progress. But I think from my understanding this week is I think it takes time. And I think it takes the ability of a human being to be able to be okay sitting at a place that is uncomfortable for them. That we need to stop trying to run away from places that we might seem as profane at first, to hide in our little fortresses of what we would call Kedusha. But rather, we should take our Kedusha out into those profane places. We should be able to live in them together. And what Rav Kook promises is if we do this and we try to absorb it, right, then we will be able to have more full and enriched lives. He continues, HaKodesh et Orach Chaim v'Pnimiyut HaMahutit. He asked the question, what do we get from each of those things? And he's going to answer this question. I think this is very important. Like, do we get everything out of the whole? Do we get everything out of the profane? Right? And what's the balance? What do we receive from each? And that's what he's going to answer here. He says, from the holy realm, from our own internal identity, from what is holy to us, or in a bigger sense, what is holy according to the Torah and Judaism, we receive the light of life. We receive our pnimiyut, our insides, what makes us who we are, our essence, our essential qualities. And so, but the big question, of course, is what do we receive from the whole? What do we receive from the profane? And he writes, what we receive from the profane, or the things that are outside of us, at least at this point, the things that are exterior to us, we receive the vessel, hakeli, hatfisa hachitzonit, the exterior understanding, labisusam shel chezkat tochanim, the foundation in which we build our inner depths. Okay, now let me break down Rav Kook's very, very elusive language here, especially his difficult Hebrew. What he's saying here is that our exterior realities, these things that sometimes make us uncomfortable, or the worlds we live in and the environments we create that are sometimes seemingly less than perfect, at first sight, actually form the vessel in which our own inner journeys lie. And by creating those vessels and making sure that our inner journeys fit into those external realities, it actually enriches our own internal journey. And as is true in Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, there's constant interaction between the vessel and the light that is inside the vessel, and also the light that is outside of the vessel as well. Right? This is true in classical Kabbalah all the time, that there's a constant exchange between the exterior and the interior of the vessel. This is happening all the time. So I think this is really a powerful message here. And it's important to understand that it's not like, Rav Kook's not saying we have to wipe away our internal identity and wipe away our internal ideas. He's rather saying the external realities that we face that can sometimes lead us to resisting things, we actually have to work and struggle to use them as vessels, meaning things that contain, things that facilitate our own inner journeys, things that actually help and further refine our own inner journeys here. Chomer lemashalim vasferot v'chuge hashkafa l'darech elam umidot derech eretz. Right, they are material in which we can conceive of allegories and ways of perceiving our own internal values. Right, and how would this work? Right, so in my example of a homosexual wedding or a gay wedding, which might seem uncomfortable at first, or even outside of the tradition, certainly for some people, we can actually use, according to Rav Kook here, as ways. Of course, I don't want to put Rav Kook in the mind. He's not talking specifically about gay marriage here. I'm using it as a kind of a version to that. He's saying here that we could, if I was to interpret it, right, that that we can use these things that might seem external to us, like gay marriage or whatever it may be, and we can use it to actually enlighten kedusha and holiness, and that's the way so many of these marriages worked, right? They used the verses from Song of Songs in new ways, and created new ceremonies, what's called a Brit Ahuvah, a covenant of love that was created between the two partners instead of Kiddushin, or the traditional way of Jewish marriage, right? It was so creative and so beautiful and so integrative of Jewish spirit, and taking a situation which might seem less than perfect at first and actually lifting up the beauty of the world and renewing Jewish values in our time in this beautiful way. And it allows us, and by doing that, Judaism actually grows and strengthens, and it becomes more beautiful. And what at first can seem uncomfortable, and we have to understand this, that there's an experience of discomfort. It's something that at first many people, including myself, are a little uncomfortable with. But actually, in the end, it helps us grow, and it helps us change, and it helps Judaism grow, and it helps God's Spirit grow in this world. And if we maybe don't resist it so much, if we're not so angry, and don't become all reclusive because of these things, but instead, rather, they enrich our lives. He continues, and the richness of the split between holiness and profanity, of the things that are holy and the things that were conceived outside of us, actually clarifies our inner identity and clarifies our life and our values by way of how much we enter those ideas into our own reality, right? So as much as we actually make our own possession, the things that are at first external to us, right? The things that are first seem outside of us, the more we are able to integrate them, the more we are able to go stronger and live a richer life. The things that first might seem sickly or dark, actually we can find the most light in. Which is just so important, so beautiful, and Rav Kook certainly lived this out in his life so much. But really, it's for us. And so I challenge each of you, reply to this Facebook, or send me a message, or send me an email. How do you struggle with things that might seem outside of you? How do you struggle and not just immediately repudiate and rebel against ideas that seem outside of you or external to your value structure? How do you take Rav Kook's challenge here and internalize those things and use them as vessels for your own personal Torah and your own personal journey? I need your advice. I need your wisdom, because I struggle with this myself, and I want to follow Rav Kook's advice. But I hope this will be a continued journey between each of us as we struggle to really fulfill the words of Rav Kook's Torah, to really enrich our lives through the integration of both external things that seem external of us and the things that are, of course, internal and holy to us. Have a wonderful week today, and I will talk to you soon. All right, our journey continues in a couple days. Bye.